Hey everybody, how's it going? So today I wanted to touch a little bit more on that whole concept of imposter syndrome that I was talking about in my day 33 video with the store updates. So to give you an idea of what I mean, I have to really ramble on with a lot of history. So if you're looking for a short video, just click X. So just to go back to the absolute very beginning, when I say it feels like after a while that you just don't belong here. I'm not someone who traveled to New York City. I grew up here. I was born here in a Methodist hospital in Brooklyn. I grew up in Staten Island. I lived there until I was 19. We moved out to a different place when I was 17, moved away and lived on my own for the first time when I was either 19 or 20, and I started my own business around 19 or 20. Now, I had my first job in Manhattan when I was about 17, interning at Avatar Studios, which I found to be one of the best studios in the world when it was still open. And I worked there for 40 to 60 hours a week for free. Just, mopping the floors, cleaning puke from, at their 30th anniversary party, doing all the jobs that no one else wanted to do. Toilet cleaning, errands, menial crap, until I finally was able to work in the tech room for free, which was actually a promotion, and just do all the bitch work in the tech room that other people didn't want to do, whether it's fix 50 or 100 pairs of these old headphones that people had destroyed, or go through every single channel of every single EQ compressor of everything on every single console and figure out which weren't working and why, and document. And then there was a lot of crap work that I did before I was at a point where I made any money. And, I eventually started working at freelance after quitting there, worked at some other studios, and eventually started my business from the ground up. And I remember in the beginning of my business, before I could afford to have an office, a store, anything like that, I remember making choices as to whether or not I was going to show up to see my clients in, $10 basketball shorts that I had, or if I was going to spend money on pants but have less stuff in stock. So, would I get a set of like $20 or $25 Old Navy khakis so I look a little more presentable, or my $5 shorts, but be able to say that I have a B154 PW01V0, B154 PW01V1, and an LP133 WX1 TLA1 in stock, so I could be the only place that if you needed a matte rather than a glossy, I got it in stock so I could do it same day. I just remember being broke enough to be thinking about those types of financial decisions as to whether I'm going to buy 3 pair of pants or a screen. And that was a very, very long time ago. That was over 11 years ago at this point. And I remember coming up with an arrangement with a recording studio owner at some point in order to use his place as my office. So at the time, in late 2008 and early 2009, I would meet the client at their apartment or their work. If they didn't want a random person they didn't know at their apartments and they couldn't meet people at their work, I would have them come to Herald Square Park. Where at the time I was working at Herald Square Park, and I actually, never going to forget this, every now and then if I needed to plug in a soldering iron. I remember during Christmas time, they would have a music show, so I figured out where they had the outlets. So I would bring my little extension cord and sneak it in there and around there and hope nobody saw it. The same way I would sneak my headphones on in high school and kind of hide them around my ear and do this and pretend I'm listening in class. I'm just pretending that I'm maybe feeding a bird or something. Look, I think I lost something, and then I'm kind of coiling my extension cord out the bottom of my pants so that I could bring it to my table, plug in my soldering iron and my stuff so I could get to work. Because this is before you really had a lot of the popularity of the TS80 or these soldering irons you could power from power banks and stuff like that. And I needed a way to plug in a charger in case the customer's machine didn't work. So this was my workspace. And if it rains, that literally, it didn't rain on my parade, it rained on my income. So I needed a real place. Also, if there were 3 or 4 customers that wanted the same slot, as more and more often happen, everybody gets off work around 4 or 5 o'clock, and if 3 or 4 people that all want that time slot, I'm doing house calls on one person, doesn't work. So I needed a central place where I could have multiple people come to me, wait, even if it's raining, and with the raining, water damage, Apple, that's not how you want to do things. So there was a studio that I was working at in the area that my friend had started using. He was using a room there, and also my ex-employer had rented a room there. So I would go there to hang out with my friend and talk in between jobs, and I would wind up doing work just because that was what I did. And he worked there. Eventually, he became the manager there, and it would screw his business up. It would screw his day up if something didn't work. So I wouldn't ask for money. It's just if there was something going wrong, like I'm not going to sit there as somebody that got to work at Avatar Studios for a fair amount of time, learn from the best technicians in the world, and just go, sorry, I'm not in the clock, buddy. I'm not helping you. I'd help my friend out. So, every now and then I'd help him with what was wrong with the place. And this studio was run by someone who had a terrible coke habit. The guy looked exactly like Adam Newman, except about 150 pounds heavier, probably a foot shorter, and reeked of cocaine. But this guy was still very good at talking people out of money. He had a studio with a beautiful lobby. The rooms themselves were actually shit, but the lobby was great, and he used the lobby, the very nice, beautiful lobby, as a means of extracting money from people that wanted to be part of the vision, the amazing vision that we have here, the beauty, the growth, expansive growth. He talked like such a scammer. He sounded like Adam Newman, but with a bit more of a Polish accent, which I'm terrible at doing. And I remember one of the guys from the corner deli showing up to the studio with $15,000 in his fucking smock to lend to this guy. There was somebody who had paid $40,000 for a year's worth of rent, and when they figured out that the studio was going to get kicked out of the building in a month or two because all the rent, money he paid in rent went up the guy's nose, not to the landlord of the building, he wound up loaning him another $70,000 that he never. It was just awful. But this guy was really good at having a business model that had made no money, but talking lots of money out of people and then putting it up his nose. So I made an agreement with him, which was, how about this? I will make sure on an official level that everything works here all the time to the standard that your clients will never call your cell phone and say, I want my money back because I couldn't use the bass amp. I want my money back because I couldn't hear myself in my headphones while I was recording. I want my money back because you said this mic is available, but it's not. By hook or by crook, I will make sure that you never get those phone calls. In exchange, I'd like for people to show up here and be able to say that they're looking for Louis Rossman to have their stuff fixed and to be seated, and for me to be able to store some tools here and some screens. I'm not gonna take actual rooms that you could charge money for. I'm just going to take the nooks and crannies of the space that you store other stuff in, maybe do stuff, clean, use the lobby, the table at the lobby, and every now and then if there's a room that's not available that nobody's using, I'll use it until somebody books it. But I won't interfere with your customers, but I want the ability to use the space. And it worked. It did at the time because I couldn't afford a space because it's New York City, and if you don't have a business loan, frankly, sometimes even if you do, you can't afford the last deposit, or them saying, oh yeah, we want a 3-month deposit, but of the last 3 months of the lease, Bernstein, all the stick in the tips in kind of stuff where you want a $51,000 deposit on a space that's an absolute dilapidated shithole. This is the way that I was getting business done. And it worked. I remember if a tube from a tube amp had a bunch of crap on it, I remember actually unscrewing it, put a piece of foam on the wall, foam on the floor, and throwing the tube over and over and over and over again for like an hour or two while I was waiting for a client until the junk moved off the filament, and plug it back in and it sounded decent again. If a tweeter blew, rather than go downstairs and pay $80 at Armin's for a new tweeter, I would take the tweeter out of the speaker and I would actually uncoil it. And then I'd find the part that melted together or broke, separated, X-Acto, green, shit it all over the place, tie it back together. It was awful. It's not the way that you fix things. It was terribly, terribly awful. I remember taking stuff out of some Behringer headphone amp and using it that was scrapped, and using it to fix KRK monitors for a 10, and it was awful. I'm very glad I did not have a YouTube channel at the time, because if I did, 10 years later, I would not be living down the shit that I did here. But I did keep my word that the studio owner would not have to spend his cocaine money on maintenance, but everything would work. I kept my word. Stuff ran there. And that's how I got to use that space. Eventually, as I discussed in the $30,000 pocket dial video, once that space wound up getting bought out by other people because the main owner spent all the money on coke and eventually it does catch up to you, I wound up getting kicked out of the space. Long story short, the new owners call. They're complaining about all sorts of crap. They're saying they want me to replace speakers in the mix room that everybody liked with JBL Eons because they said that people want to see the big ones on the desk. And it's like, No, you're talking about Yuri 813s, Lansing 604Es, West-Tone monitors, not fucking $100 used JBL Eon speakers that are very clearly PA speakers that are made for shitty, cheap rehearsal rooms. Like, nobody wants to mix on that. Nobody wants to see that on the desk. No, just no. And I explained it as politely as I could that you're going to screw up the studio, ruin revenue, that the place did not fail because all the rooms sucked so that bad. You know, they weren't great rooms, but they failed because the owner put the income up his nose. And I remember getting off the phone with him and telling this woman I was dating at the time all the reasons that this didn't make sense. You know, you guys sell drugs. The people, you know, that took the studio over from him were trafficking, all sorts of shit. And I don't tell you how to sell your drugs. Can you not tell me, after working at Avatar for about a year, how a studio mix room is supposed to look like? Just saying, you know, you're trying to get me to put cheap piece of shit rehearsal studio speakers in a mix room. They're not even going to fit in there. They're not going to fit on the stands, anything. Just no. And unfortunately, my phone, since I was cleaning my bathtub and I had water on my hand and my Galaxy S4G at the time was not liquid resistant, kind of pocket dialed him, and he heard all of this, and he had me on speaker with the other guy, and they said all sorts of stuff, like all sorts of nonsensical, threatening BS that they never followed through on. But needless to say, my arrangement with that place was done. So I wound up moving next door to a place called Planet to Planet, and John Grossbard was the owner of that. And now, I couldn't afford a real office or a real store because, again, you know, they want a lot of stuff that I can provide. This guy didn't. He said $3,300. The space was pretty large. I don't know, you know, it's probably around total with the lounge and lobby, probably around 900 to 1,000 square feet, but it was a basement. And, you know, you had to walk through the freight elevator, past Club Rebel's trash dumpster that smelled and looked like the worst effing refuse you've seen in your life. Just again, it's a club in Midtown. And then you had to go to this very large door at the end that looks like something bad is going to happen to you if you open it. You can see this in all my Yelp reviews from 2011, by the way. Go downstairs where it smells like a bunch of weed and crap and coke and all sorts of shit. Make a left. Go down this dark, unlit corridor that you can barely see, and then at the end of it is going to be a very dimly lit, shitty wooden door with a little sheep logo printed on a zebra printer. And that's me. Why'd I do that? Because because I could share that space with two other people, so my monthly effective cost was closer to $1,500 to $2,000 just to maintain a place in Midtown, and he didn't want a security deposit, and he didn't want the last month. It's not like last security where they try to get 4 to 6 months out of you. It was 1 month. So it was what I could afford. And John Grossbard, the owner of the place, was the one that used to say, if I made this place any nicer, you couldn't afford it, all the time. But it was the truth. If he made it any nicer, I could not afford it. Or the other thing he used to say that I used to love it, it's probably something you guys did. Like with the first day that we moved in, it was filled with bed bugs. And he said, it's probably something you guys brought in. It's like, no. We worked next door for 3.5 years. No bed bugs. We move in here for 1 day. Bed bugs, John. Bed bugs. But moving on from that, I worked out of that space for a really long time. And I had to leave that space because we were growing. I couldn't share a space with other people. I got to a point where I realized business may do better if I had a dedicated space just for me, where I could install my own lighting that didn't have to be the studio vibe lighting thing. I'm not sharing it with other people that work there that also got kicked out of the space next door for other reasons. What if my customers didn't have to walk past a garbage dumpster for Club Rebel while they're on the way to my place? Maybe that would increase the likelihood that virtually any female customer would actually show up rather than just fearing that someone's going to beat them over the head with a baseball bat and do terrible things to them. We actually had a lot more female customers start showing up after we left that space. I can only imagine how many people I lost from just seeing that and going, nope, not walking down that freight elevator. Like somebody even mentioned it. They said, female, Midtown, dark, unlit freight elevator entrance with just no. I usually don't do this, but I made an exception, which I appreciate. I eventually found this store. It took me 6 months of looking to find this store. I dealt with a lot of unscrupulous realtors. Same story as what I was recording. It's just I wasn't recording it at the time. And, all the people that said, you're never going to do better than this. This is all you can get. You're never going to do better than this. What do you expect? Blah, blah, blah. Always kind of like saying, you're trying to put me down because I only had the $3,000 to $4,000 range to spend. And one of them showed me a space that, I'm never going to find better than this. It was close to about $9,000. And I think it's used by an eyeglass place right now on the corner of 10th Street and First Avenue. And right after he said that, the same way that happened with all the other shit realtors, that all the people that said you're not going to find better, you can't do better, you shouldn't expect better. I walked down the fucking block from 10th and 1st to 11th and 1st, and I see an empty space. And I decide to bother the super, and I bother the person in the A1 music store next door before they went out of business, where Handsome Dan's Candy Shop also went out of business. And I asked them about it, and I find this place. And it's available. So I asked for details. It's owned by some seemingly 100-year-old Korean man who's very strict, who doesn't want any, no restaurant, no bar, no club, no this, no that, no you. But the idea of a shy, socially awkward, strange, humble, soft-spoken computer repair person, yeah, sure, I'll take that. And he did. And it was interesting. So I move into that place, and he wanted a $10,000 500 deposit, which, well, ouch. Right now, it sucks, but fine. Back then, that was, okay, do I really need the second kidney kind of thing? So what I did to afford it, because I couldn't afford that, was I wound up selling a bunch of repair services on eBay at a price below what it was that most would usually sell it for, even outside of New York City. So if a service was typically $300, I sold it for $140. If something was typically $450, I sold it for like $149. And this was before the market was like it is now. Now the market is put together in such a way where if you go on eBay, you'll see people doing board repair on iPhones for like $20. What kind of quality you get for $20? Who the hell knows? But people are offering backlight fuse replacements for like $10, $15. It's just, it's obscene. But back then, in 2010 and 2011, even though there was competition, it wasn't like it is right now. So there was still a chance to say, okay, instead of making this much profit, I'll settle for making this much profit, and many more people will buy the service. Like right now, everybody's working at this much profit. So eBay repair profit is just buy. But eBay is a very price-sensitive way of selling things. So in my store, if I go change the price on something from, let's say Sonny and I are both $300 for something, and I change it to $290, I'm not going to see any change in the people that show up. Maybe if I lower it a lot. But on eBay, if everybody else is $300 and I go to $299.99, because eBay is this very price-sensitive medium where so many people are searching by the lowest price, very few people go to eBay because brand recognition, quality, that type of thing. It's like, I want to get something cheap. That's what eBay's for. If I lower the price by that just 1 cent and it gets me to show up first, bam, I'm going to get a lot more business. I remember this in 2011. If I took a B156XW02 that every other company sold for $52.58 and I sold it for $52.56, just going from 53 to 52.56 would take me from around the 10 to 12 sales a day area to the 80 to 100 sales a day area of that part. It's that price sensitive. So what I did is I put up a listing and said, here, we'll do this screen repair or this board repair or whatever, but 6 to 12 week turnaround. Not 1 or 2 days, not 1 or 2 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, if you're lucky. If you want to save money, here's a way to do it. And surprise, surprise, a lot of people actually still did it. So what I did is, since PayPal didn't want to release the money on an early account at the time, what I did in order to get them to release the money is I delivered the merchandise. So they would not deliver release the money until 3 days after the device showed up or whatever you sold showed up. So what I would do when I sold the repair services, the moment I sold it, I'd first class mail with tracking a little pamphlet on our company. It would talk about the difference between grade A and A minus screens. It would talk about what the little 9 means on an LG box versus the 5 versus nothing being there versus an A. It would talk about what you can expect from our services and so on and so forth. It was a little pamphlet that explained my service. And then when they saw the pamphlet got delivered, they released the money. I would get the machine, and eventually I would fix it. This did 2 things. Firstly, since a bunch of people bought the service up front, it gave me a pot of money in order to pay that security deposit. But the other thing that it did is if I kept it going for a while, is as long as I was willing to run a Ponzi scheme on my time, it gave me a bit of capital. So this allowed me to get a loan that no bank would be willing to give me, which was great. So I had this capital coming in, and I kept that going for quite a while. I think I stopped it in around mid-2013. Around mid-2013 is when I cut off eBay. So it took me about a year and a half to get rid of this. But what it did was I would do my normal work for the store around, between the hours of 10 and 8. And then after 8, I would stay at the store until 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, just working on all these jobs that were showing up because I made the price so low. So rather than get a few mail-ins a week, I was getting 30 or 40 mail-ins a week, which now is normal, but back then was insane. And it was because I had lowered the price a lot. So I was barely making any money on these, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered is having cash flow. And eventually, I would have to pay the vendors who were doing the board repair for me because anything that wasn't basic, simple board repair was getting sent someplace. Luckily, they were dirt cheap. I think it was like 60 or 80 a board repair at the time. And I would have to pay the vendors for the parts that I was using. But that would be something I had to pay later, whereas I got the money right now. So eventually, the store's main business had to go up enough that I would be able to end that mail-in 6 to 12 week turnaround thing and catch up financially. So I was making a bet that the store business would go up, and I was also running a Ponzi scheme on my time whereby it's not just 10 to 8 Lewis, you're also mail-in Lewis, which is, from 8 p.m. until like 3 in the effing morning every day for a year and a half. And it worked. Now, the reason I had to do this is because I pretty much don't belong here. The reason I had to share an office with the studio is because with the amount of money I had and the resources available to me, if I wanted to, do what I wanted to do and do what I thought was valuable to customers that other people weren't doing, I had to do this non-standard thing because I don't belong here. I had to get a store I had to take 6 months to find a store rather than a week because I needed it to be cheap and the others were not, because I don't belong here. I needed to do this ridiculous convoluted scheme to make the money to get this store because I don't belong here. And it's strange because at some point I would imagine that I would feel like I did belong here, even if I didn't feel like I belonged there in the beginning because of all the Shawshank Redemption sewer of crap you have to go through if you start from nothing to make a business or a name for yourself. Maybe when I got to the point of having over 400 5-star reviews that I didn't have to offer a 20 to 40% discount to the customer to get, I'd feel like I belong there. Maybe once I was able to employ about a dozen people where I was able to pay them 20 to 40% more than any of the nearby repair shops would pay them for the same skill set, maybe then I'd be able to feel like I belong here. Maybe once I've been able to educate tens of thousands of people on how to either fix something themselves if they can't afford to pay me, or teach them how to open up their own shop and follow in my footsteps. Or maybe once I'm pushing right to repair bills and lobbying in favor of people so that we can still have the basic rights to our property that we had 50 or 70 years ago, maybe then I'd feel like I belong here. But the reality is, regardless of any of that, I still feel like I don't. And this is really strange because I'm at the point where I'm looking at moving into a place that is $12,500 a month in rent. I paid a 2-month security deposit, and I'm paying a good amount for moving, construction, renovations, like, just leveling the floor, putting a new counter in, the new security cameras, a bunch of new desks, new tables, new data recovery, clean room, workspaces, all sorts of stuff is going into this. And, just really setting a new repair shop that's 3.5 times the size up, a lot of it from scratch. I can't bring a lot of the desks from the current location because they're literally built into the wall. There's a lot I have to do, and this is going to wind up costing probably somewhere in the $80,000 to $130,000 range. Now, I am incredibly thankful for the fact that on the GoFundMe and the Patreon, it looks like $30,000 or $31,000 was raised from people that I hope benefited from the educational stuff I put up, maybe, helped you make a few bucks here and there. Thank you very much, all of you. But the rest of that is going to be paid by myself staying, again, running a Ponzi scheme of my time, staying at work until 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, a bunch of nights like I was earlier you could see in the Louis Rossman live random channel, some bunch of 9-hour live streams of board repair, or, some sort of toxic shit funding method that is willing to give a loan. But the thing is, that additional 80 to 120K is something that I'm going to be paying. And I'm going to be paying that because somebody's not going to pull a SoftBank on me and say, here's $3 million, just give it back when you want, bro. Oh, your business model's not viable? Who cares? Who cares? Just take it. Oh, here, just have more. Like, it's something that I'm going to be doing. And the thing is, that is in and of itself the thing that makes me feel like I don't belong here. So what winds up happening every step of the way is that things are ridiculously difficult. Like, people were looking at me like, oh, that guy's pretending to do something so he can lay an extension cord in the park so that he can plug in a soldering iron and a charger? What? I'm doing that because I need a place to work, and I can't afford places to work at the time. Now, when I'm walking up and down every single block of the city for hours and hours and hours to find the location I finally found, I'm doing that because, as you see, when I go the realtor method, nothing is available. When it comes to contractors and people go, Louis, why are you hiring an architect that draws a wall into an electrical panel? Why are you hiring a contractor that tries to screw you out of the materials, or that makes something that you literally have to go back and forth with them for a week and a half to get them to cop that their flooring needs work and that they need to rip up their work and redo it? It's all of this stuff. Why is it that the plumber that's supposed to show up that a month ago doesn't show up until you threaten them with the lease terms over and over again for a month? All of this kind of stuff, it all comes down to one basic thing, which to me is I don't have the requisite amount of money to get you to actually give a shit. Even if you say you give a shit for the amount I'm giving you, you don't. And this is where the imposter syndrome thing kicks in, which is that it's weird because even with this amount of, any of these amounts of money are not actually enough to get them interested. What I feel like at the end of the day is that anything that happens that is bad, anything that happens that's wrong, it's not that the other person's not at fault. It's not that the architect is not a jackass for not replying to us, giving us wrong information, and wanting $7,000. It's not that the contractor isn't a jackass that's constantly trying to put the tip in. It's not that the realtors and the landlords that lie about the condition of the spaces or the size of the spaces or treat people like shit are not at fault. But at the end of the day, I feel like I'm more at fault than any of them. And the reason is because I feel like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. I have this lingering feeling that it's me, that I am trying to do something I'm not supposed to do, and everything bad that happens to me, even if they took part in it, I allowed it to happen. I started it happening by trying to run a business in New York City while not being a multimillionaire, by trying to live in this city without being a multimillionaire. So even in this video that just recently got cleared of a community strike, by the way, thank you very much to whoever at YouTube decided that a video of BlackBerry or Clinton is not harmful or dangerous, and thank you for the person that cleared all the other related strikes. One of the videos that was struck was a video where I'm going over apartments, and I walk by this ad for apartments in Manhattan, and you can see it's like $4,000 a month for a box, $8,000 a month for this, $10,000 a month for that, $3 million for this with a $3,000 or $5,000 a month maintenance fee, all sorts of crazy shit. And the thing is, this brings me back to a story that I told in a recent video about my stepmom Adele, who was, well, we were on 5th Avenue and 59th Street about 10 and a half years ago when I was living in a $700, 100-something square foot place with mice because I couldn't afford better. Just on 59th Street and 5th Avenue in Manhattan. She goes, oh, you're looking for a new apartment. It looks like they have vacancies in that building. And my dad and I thought she was kidding. And then when she realized, oh, you're not. You're from Wisconsin. You just don't know better. We broke out laughing in the middle of 5th Avenue. Like, I'm living in a place with mice because I can't afford better. And you just suggested that on 59th Street and 5th Avenue, because you saw a vacancy in a building, that I should apply. That apartment's going to be $3 or $5 or $20 or $40 million with a $3,000 to $20,000 a month maintenance. That apartment's not for me. That apartment is not for it's not for speaker reconing people. It's not for recording engineers. It's not for veterinarians. It's not for people who prepare your food. It's not for people that drive your taxi. It's not for people that fix your car. It's not for a plumber. It's not for a contractor. Maybe my contractor, but it's not for it's not for an honest contractor. It's not for a chef. It's not for a personal trainer. It's for somebody, but it's not for any of us. It's for people that have $20 to $40 million to burn on an apartment. And this is just like, it's not like I spend all of my time in Manhattan. I've lived here for 31 years. I ride my bike through the South Bronx, or I'll ride it through Riverdale. I'll ride my bike through the glossy areas of Manhattan, and then I'll ride it through Bushwick, Bed-Stuy, East New York, Brownsville. I've been around the city everywhere. And you just go to these places where people have a $1,200 apartment that they're doing their best to hold on to because the landlord would like nothing more than to put $2,000 into slightly prettier kitchen appliances, get the front done with that bullshit fishbowl looking horseshit where there's ceiling and floor glass, so that $1,200 apartment can become a $5,000 a month apartment. And the moment someone moves out of that, it's going to get replaced with one of those. And it's just one of these, regardless of where you are, I know there's lots of people in the city that feel like they don't belong. But emotionally, which is not rational, but it just is what it is, I wind up feeling like it's me that doesn't belong. It's me, and only me, because I'm trying to do something I'm not supposed to do, which is exist here. Even getting this apartment, they wanted lots of evidence of higher salary and all this crap I didn't have, so I had to make up some BS story about how I do projects, so sometimes I'll have no income and sometimes I'll have a large income. And I made this one proposal to redo the sounds for a church, which was going to be around $40,000 to $60,000, look like that was a recurring payment for something by scanning, editing, and all sorts of shit. Like, I apologize to my landlord if he for lying, but I've paid my rent on time for every month for like the past 9 years, so I don't feel too bad. But even just to get an apartment that didn't look like trash, that had a nice brick and a setup where if I play music, my neighbors can't hear it because it's a proper fucking building, not some modern shit. You have to do this type of stuff, and it's just, or else you're going to be living in an apartment where you pay $1,200 to $1,500 a month. You have to live with 3 other people in a total shitbox where there's no heat, because if the water is not running through the pipes at all times because the pipes are not insulated properly, they freeze and crack, and then you have no heat or hot water. That, if you want to live like that, you have to find a deal. You have to have a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who, if you make this shit up or lie in some way, you'll get in. That's the way it works. And regardless of where you are, even if you're just somebody who decided to sign up for the rec center gym at $75 a year rather than pay some Equinox horseshit gym membership fee, an amount of money for a gym that anywhere else in the U.S. would get you a nice gym, here gets you a gym infested with cockroaches where the showers are disgusting and nasty and shitty. And everywhere you go in this city, there's a constant reminder that if you're not a multimillionaire, you don't belong here. This is not for you. Go away. And that is what I feel as a business owner on a regular basis throughout this entire project. The recurring thought in my head, it's very similar to something that happened to my dad. I remember him telling me that, even in the late 80s, he wasn't one of those people that worked on Wall Street that made a lot of money. Every now and then he may have to wear a certain suit, and that may make him look like he made more money. And because he was going into that building, people would treat him a certain way that they usually wouldn't. There was this one time, I'm never gonna forget him telling me this story of this one person that was half his age that was acting like he had the hots for him. And he's kind of like me in the comments, and somebody goes, "Why do you have the circles under your eyes? Go to a doctor." It's like, I do twice a year. It's like genetics. Naturally ugly. Sorry, it's not. Don't have any deficiencies. It's just ugly. And with him, he would say the same shit. He's like, I like me. I like who I am. I like my life. But I know what I am. I'm ugly. Ain't that interesting? I'm not rich. And there was this one person that shows up. And he's like, she's like putting her hand on his shoulder and like being all nice to him, super flirtatious, half his age, and he's married. She doesn't care. He's married, half my dad's age, flirting and everything. Asks if she wants, he wants to go home with her, and he's kind of wondering, he's like, what? Nope, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. Not even because I'm married. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing. It's just I know I'm not that interesting. I know I'm not that good looking. And I'm over twice your fucking age. So I'm just not going to do it. And apparently it found, she was pregnant with somebody else's kid, and word got around that she was kind of looking to find somebody to make responsible for that. And, one of the things that my dad taught me is that you should realize your limitations, realize when you're being foolish, know when something's too good to be true. And I have that same feeling when it comes to running a business here. It's kind of like if I was 75 years old and some beautiful 19-year-old Instagram model influencer, whatever, starts DMing me and flirting with me and acting all flirtatious and all that. And, and I'm 70, 75 years old. And I'm not really that interesting, and I don't have any money. Something's off. I should notice something's off there. Rather than get all stoked up and excited and, wow, look at what I got. It should be, I'm like 70, 75 years old. Why is it that this person's interested? Now, if that person winds up emptying your bank account or stealing your car or humiliating you in front of your whole family and a bunch of people, or being crazy or being high on drugs or whatever, or having some sort of serious addiction, and they involve you in that, absolutely that's their fault. That's their responsibility. But I would have to accept culpability for the fact that I let this into my life by virtue of not using my brain, by not realizing my place in the world. As a 75-year-old man, something should go off in my head when a beautiful, hot 19-year-old model starts flirting with me that says, you know what? I'm a 75-year-old, kind of ugly, not rich old man. This just ain't right. I'm not saying that no relationship like that could work out. I'm not saying none of them can. Just odds are something here is funny. Something's up. Let me think about that. Let me think about whether or not this is appropriate before I move forward. And, as my dad said, don't be foolish. And that is how I feel as a business owner. Absolutely. When the architect puts a wall through an electrical panel, ignores us, and doesn't get back to us more than once every couple of days, doesn't get, gives us vague responses to things that I can't really use, doesn't get involved in the project, gives me wrong information that almost gives me a fucking heart attack. That's on for $7,200. That's on them, and they deserve to take the blame for it. When the contractor screws around with materials, gives me a floor that creaks until for a full week, I have to convince him that his employees are correct when they say that shit should not be like that. Let us rip it up, boss. Please, it's not going to cost you much money. Let us rip it up. When dealing with, even just the plumber who was supposed to show up to move the radiator a month ago, who didn't. And then they said, oh, yeah, Lewis didn't want us to move that. I said, what? It's literally written in the lease. The lease that you had me pay an attorney $5,000 to comb through because you made it 80 effing pages. I gotta wonder, I finally get the person to show up after 2 or 3 times that they were supposed to show up that they don't. What would this be like if that architect were getting paid 10 times more money to work on Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, a much nicer, or this little boutique coffee shop that they're getting paid $200,000 or $300,000 to put together? What would that contractor who's getting his $20,000 to $43,000 from me think if he was working on a $400,000 home renovation? Would that plumber do his job if the management company that told him to come here, if that management company were managing the corner store that's paying $60,000 for a minuscule coffee shop in a luxury building? Would that plumber show up immediately versus in showing up to my $66 a square foot little dump that is in a 103-year-old building? Like, would he show up properly if I was in the better building? I kind of think maybe they would. Maybe they'd suck at everything else. I'm open to it, but something tells me that I'm trying to do something I'm not supposed to do. And that's why I run into all this resistance. Now, Erica will scold me, and rightfully so, for feeling bad about this. She will scold me because I'm admittedly being emotional and saying that I think that the reason that I run into all this stuff is because I'm asking for it. It's because I haven't paid them enough to care. She'll say, no, you didn't tell them I need this at this price, lower your price. You said, here's what I want done. What is it worth to you? And when they told you what it was worth to them, you gave them that money. Okay, I didn't give them all of it. I gave them a deposit. But you get the idea. I signed the dotted line and said, here, let's work together. And they chose to fuck up. But even that being considered, If I'm the 75-year-old guy and the 19-year-old girl model comes up to me and wants to date me, and I'm like, hey, listen, prenuptial agreement or whatever, I'm still, I should, even if I'm negotiating terms, I should still realize I'm negotiating terms in a relationship that shouldn't exist. And that's what I feel like here. On a regular basis, every single day, the reason that all of these small things are so much harder than they should be is because I believe that I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. I'm identifying as something I'm not supposed to identify as. I identify as someone who belongs in New York City. I'm identifying as a New York City small business owner that has a customer base that cares about what he does. And that's the thing. I have tens of thousands of happy customers here. If you Google my name or the name of my business, the only real salt that you will find on me is shit taken out of context by r/Apple. There are countless thousands of people that are very happy with the money we saved them, with the data we've recovered for them, with the service we gave them when someone else would not put in even a quarter of the effort for twice the money to help them out. Like, rationally speaking, I realize that I belong here. But emotionally speaking, I feel like an imposter. The interesting thing is that even though it was 11 and a half years ago that I was deciding, do I buy an LP133WX1 and then a B154PW01V1 matte and a V0 glossy so I have everything in stock for same day? Or do I buy 4 cents of $15 to $20 khaki pants from Old Navy so I don't look like a fucking idiot showing up at a job as a business owner in where I'm dealing with paying clients in $5 basketball shorts? Even though it was 11 years ago that I was laying the extension cord in Herald Square Park so that I could plug in and use, this is so embarrassing, and try to use my soldering iron and a plug in the park. Even though it was 10 years ago that I was taking a tweeter and trying to keep just cutting voice coil, cutting this and like mash it back together and take shit out of a Behringer headphone amp, put it into a KRK speaker just so that it would work long enough for people not to complain about the room not working for the session. If somebody told that Lewis back then that someday you're going to be wealthy enough that you're not going to be working in a park, you're going to have a store that costs over $12,000 a month that houses your 13 employees that work on the business that you're getting from the reputation you developed over 10 years that led to a YouTube channel that has over 1 million subscribers so that you have an international renowned name as one of the best in your business, best in your field. If someone told me that I would have all of that, I'd laugh at them. I would sooner believe that I had the capability to win lotto than to go from where I was 12 years ago to where I am now, to where I was when I was cleaning the puke of musicians from the floor of Avatar Studios, to having this business with 13 employees, moving into a space that's in Midtown Manhattan that's 2,300 square feet, having it decked out, look nice and beautiful in the end, with 13 knowledgeable, caring, dedicated people that work there, and a worldwide reputation. I would say, you're kidding me. No, I would sooner believe I'd win the lotto. But you know what I'd even sooner believe than that? That after all of that growth, I would still feel as poor with all of that new stuff as I did in the very beginning. Honestly, I feel like as much of an imposter trying to do business in the city now as I did 12 years ago. I feel just as much like I belong here now that I did 12 years ago. It's weird. It is. Because the thing is, back then, I was a hundredaire trying to compete with thousandaires and 10,000aires. And now I'm a thousandaire that's trying to do what you should be a millionaire to do. And I kind of wonder, does it ever actually go away? If someday I became a millionaire, would I feel like, well, I'm an imposter because I'm trying to compete, or now I'm going to take on a new challenge, and that challenge is something that I should be a 10 or 100 millionaire to do. If I became a 100 millionaire, would I try to solve problems that would require that you be a billionaire to solve them? I'm kind of wondering how other people feel that have climbed that have gotten to the 10 millionaire, 100 millionaire, and then billionaire range. Is there a point at which you stop feeling like an imposter? I do wonder, do the Scott Galloways and the Peter Schiffs of the world still feel like imposters when they go from their beginnings to where they are now? Or does it end? Is it even a financial thing, or is it just a New York City thing? It's hard for me to tell. But one thing's for sure is that one of the reasons that I'll genuinely feel guilt, even if I'm aggravated at a contractor, even if I plan on suing the architect, which is still fully on the table if I don't get my effing refund check soon, even if I feel like I am completely within my right to show up with Paul or Steve, ask politely if you can address the floor, ask slightly less than politely if you'll address the floor, at some point show up there and kind of imply that I'm not going to let you physically leave the fucking premises until you tell me that you're ripping up that shit board that you put in there and doing the fucking subfloor right so it doesn't creak. I feel okay demanding that you show up and move the radiator that you said you were going to move. I feel justified telling someone who advertised an 850 square foot space as 1,800. I don't give a shit if it's New York. You can't do that. At the end of the day, I still feel like I'm at fault because I'm doing what I'm not supposed to do. Run a business in New York City. I'm doing what I'm not supposed to do. Live in New York City as a non-millionaire. And what's weird is that I know I'm not alone. Because emotionally, I feel like that this is something that I'm alone in. But realistically speaking, like, I'm not alone. I live in Bed-Stuy. I ride my bike through Bushwick. I ride my bike to Manhattan through, I have to pass through Williamsburg, but then I also have to go through the Lower East Side projects before I get to my store. I may ride to, let's say, go to my gym, which gets to the nicer uppity Chelsea area, but then I can also ride my bike to the South Bronx. Or when I go home, if I feel like exercising a little bit more and I want to pedal a little bit more, and if I just don't want to come home immediately, I want to still get some fresh air, I can pedal through East New York or Crown Heights. I'm fully aware that this city is filled with many people who are far worse off than I am, who are far worse off than even where I was 10 or 12 years ago, who probably, like me, feel like they no longer belong here. But it's a weird feeling. It's a weird thing where in my head, everybody else belongs here and I don't. It's just strange. And I'm kind of curious if other people who've run a business in the city have felt the same way. When you run into all these ridiculous problems that other people don't have in other areas, do you kind of start to think that it's actually you that's crazy because you want someone who signed up for a job to just do it? Do you feel like you're crazy because you want someone who posts an ad for real estate to just post it and for it to just be the size they said it was when you show up? Is it them or is it me? Because at a certain point in time, if everything around you is acting the same way and I'm the only one that's different, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's me. That's where I'm at. This video is way too long, so I'm going to cut it. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.